Wife cheated many times while we dated, even once for money. This is the condensed version. My wife and I met in high school and married when we were just 20 years old. We have been married for almost 25 years. On our wedding day, I was aware that she'd cheated just once, and it was the only time she'd admitted to it. I persisted in my efforts throughout the years because I had a nagging suspicion that there were more. She confessed to cheating twice, before we were married, during our 10th year of marriage, and she confessed to cheating 3 times, before we were married, during our 14th year of marriage. It was at the end of her 20th year that she admitted to having done it 4 times before to our marriage, but only kissing. Do you see a trend here? When I need to talk about it, I need to talk about it, and I'm always interested if she cheated more than once. This often results in a heated quarrel, with her accusing me of being ruthless and obsessed with her. My contention was that she never provided me with the opportunity to make an informed decision about whether or not to marry her. Among the other details, I was a virgin, and she claimed to be as well, albeit this was a fabrication. 2 years into our marriage, she finally admitted that she had had sex with all of her partners. She had refused to acknowledge that she had been deceived for 2 years. My feelings about our story had changed over the years, and she made me feel terrible about it. In its first form, it was a story of a first love that ended up in marriage. It turned out that I was only one among many, but she was the very first person I had ever met. I've had a sudden impulse to vent, which is why I'm writing this blog post today. I offered her an ultimatum: either recognize everything or we'd be divorcing. She accepted the challenge. In her statement, she didn't give any new information on the situation. My knowledge of the reality is limited, and I must accept that fact, but I really hope she would share more information with me, no matter how embarrassing it will be for her. That is the very bare minimum she can do. Nota bene, she has always excused her promiscuity as a phase of rebellion, stating that she was a good girl who was simply going through a hard time in her life. And we were both in our 20s. She also claimed that she was abused by her uncle from the time she was a child until she was in her 30s. As a freshman in college, I really used facilities with female classmates, never engaging in any improper behavior except than making cookies with an admission companion whom I regarded to be a friend. She has always made me believe she cheated on me when I was away on business, but there is no concrete evidence to support my suspicions, because I don't think she's cheated on me since we've been married, and our marriage has been joyful except for this issue, which has always stayed in the background. Our marriage has been happy. I sometimes compose texts to myself in order to vent. Here's the most recent example. Clarity may occasionally be found in the middle of the night, when you least expect it. Here are a few suggestions. Is everything she's told me true? Because she refuses to promise to God, despite the fact that this is exactly what you do when you take an oath, this is most likely not the case. She was relying on an out-of-date religious argument, which she was well aware was untrue given that everybody who takes an oath vows allegiance to God. She refused to swear the final time since she wasn't telling the complete truth at that point. Conclusion: she is aware that there is more she is lying about than she is letting on. So, what do we do now? I'm aware that her tactic is to tell me half the truth while leaving out the S part, so should I trust her when she says she's told me everything? Without a doubt, no. With all due respect, I feel that she most likely cheated twice as often as she has admitted. Maybe she's embarrassed, and I can only wish for the worst when it comes to her. During the early stages of our relationship, she went to the movies with her sister's ex-boyfriend, just after high school. He was referred to as her older brother by her. I recall her lying about it, but it was her mother who unwittingly brought it to my attention. As soon as I came the next day, she told me the first thing she noticed was that they didn't touch one another. What? Her tell, I assume, was something like that. Later, she admitted that he had shown an interest in having relations with her and asked to kiss. She conveyed her discomfort with the situation and requested that he take her home. I'm going to assume she had relations with him. If anybody is interested, I can provide examples of her sharing partial facts with others without getting into the element of the story. It became out that Wendy's supervisor was a predator who had relations with the teenage ladies who worked for him. He tried to kiss her, she told me, but she declined because she wasn't that type of girl. I remember her telling me this. I'm inclined to assume she had relations with him. She had with an adult neighbor in exchange for money, and she may have with another adult neighbor in exchange for a raise. I don't believe teenagers are capable of making sensible decisions. The problem was that she was acting in a way that suggested we had the same values. I'd asked her earlier in our marriage if she'd had relations with a different neighbor and she denied it. She first disputed it, but then admitted to having had relations with him before to our meeting. At some point throughout our relationship, I've always believed she had contact with him at least once. He was constantly on the phone with them and had even spent the night a number of times. I'm going to think she had relations with him. Another uncle, great uncle, of hers was a jerk. Her father was a jerk as well. He used to provide her with financial assistance and other assistance. He made her feel uncomfortable on a few of occasions, she said, by implying that she owed him anything. Perhaps she had relations with him, which would have been unlawful under the law given that she was a minor and he was most likely in his 70s at the time. However, I can see why she would be ashamed, and if it did happen, I really apologize that it occurred. Finally, she has a relative who is our same age and who has a history of abusing her. In a recent interview, she revealed that her cousin had helped her pay for her prom dress and also told her that I would no longer be her boyfriend since I was going for university this fall. She most definitely had relations with him. I'd want to express my regret for what happened once again, but all I want is the truth. Because she never recognized anything I did, I have some of the guilt for this. A hypothetical question was asked to her the next morning, after one of the instances of cheating. What would you do if I had relations with someone else? Because I was a teenager at the time, I recall stating I'd leave you like it happened yesterday. It was just like that, huh? She inquired. It wasn't until later in the day that she told me that a guy she had gone out with the night before had approached her and asked her to have but she refused, ordering him to put it away. It was a falsehood, to be sure, but it served as an example of how she almost always expressed the truth while leaving out the component. Of course, she eventually admitted to having relations with him that night. She finally admitted to using the same strategy she had used with the others. This is partially my fault since I felt outraged as she came to terms with the reality of the situation over time. In my wrath, I referred to her as a suit and a war, respectively. Although I now regret it, I have not mentioned her by name since she confessed to her second indiscretion, which occurred during her 10th year of marriage. In order to avoid dealing with me calling her names and asking more probing questions, she would rather lie. I'm scared I'll never be able to uncover the whole truth. Thank you for taking the time to read this. Please respond if you need any other information. Another question is one that I'd like to have addressed by a woman with experience. Alternatively, any other advice offered by a woman. Simply put, I'm interested as to whether my wife's behavior makes any sense. Making up a falsehood about being a virgin is not a good idea. Why? It would not have made a difference in the outcome. In any case, I had a sneaky sensation that she was deceiving me. How many times have you lied in your life? Another thing she does is minimize the fact that she had relations with someone. I didn't like it, I only loved it because you were there, for instance. There were some surprises. It wasn't like a film as you would have imagined. I didn't kiss anybody while I was doing it, so it wasn't really passionate. I'd never had it until meeting you. No one has ever seen me naked, and no one has ever seen us naked. I've never had the opportunity to view their penis. After her second admission, I went to a club because I wanted to see another woman naked in her underwear. I told her of the situation. Despite the fact that I went to college in a co-ed environment, I was never inappropriate with my floor mates. She makes the assertion that no one has seen my breasts at that point, which sometimes frustrates me and prompts me to shout, "Really? Their penises were in your vagina, and I'd prefer it if you showed them your breasts rather than engaging in contact with them, so please do." Do you think any of this is even somewhat realistic, ladies? Even though I wasn't very fond of my hand when I was 14, it still felt fantastic. I hope this isn't too graphic. Sorry for the long diatribe. Please accept my apologies for the inconvenience. I'm in the midst of my life and don't have any brothers, aunts or cousins that are more mature than I am to speak to.